The sweet warmth of a lovely wind brushed against Apisa's face, and her short hair fluttered behind her. Wow. The morning sun sure felt amazing on her skin, and she couldn't help but take in a deep breath and smile widely. She leaned against the railing of the small ship, and her eyes darted to the horizon. The shore of Corinne was on the left side of the vessel, but Apisa stared out toward the right side, where the sea met the sky. The ship was moving pretty fast, and the wind was at their back. 2 days ago, she and her 2 best friends booked passage on a swift little ship, and their destination was to her hometown of Buka. It had been about 2 years since she had been home last, and ecstatic fondness danced in her heart. She couldn't wait to see how big her little sister Apoma had gotten, or whether a woman had managed to steal the heart of her older brother Bouillon. Someone leaned on the rail next to her, and Apisa turned her attention to the person beside her. Rayko's long hair blew behind her, and the young woman smiled.
My word, that horizon is lovely, is it not? Reminds me of my own home city, Tolfagus. We can see the eastern horizon from our ports.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what lies beyond the eye can see.
One of the deckhands perked his head back up, and then walked over to the pair of them.
Oh, so you want to know what lies out west, do you? There are wonderful countries out that way.
Oh? What countries lie to the west of Corinne?
Well, for one, there is a vast meadow where a bunch of centaurs live. Beyond that, there's this vast and dry desert-like country called Enonok, I think. And then there's this continent north of them with 4 countries. What were their names? Rybald, Vexbra, Ibu, and Matando.
Wow, I had no idea the world was that big. Thank you for the information, mister.
The deckhand moved away from them, and so Apisa and Rayko turned their attention back to the horizon.
You know, it would be totally cool to see some of those places one day.
Yes, it would, darling. So, other than to tell him where we're going, have you spoken to the musician since he beat you in your little brutish display of force?
Nope, not really. I mean, it's not really his fault, but still.
I swear, you are so funny sometimes. For someone who prides themselves on being simple and happy-go-lucky, you certainly have a tremendous amount of pride. Do not get me wrong, I do not care for the man in the least, but you... Are you really so content with leaving things so awkwardly?
You don't understand. I was gloating and telling him that I was going to whoop his butt. It's not just my pride that I'm nursing. I feel bad that I was, well, kind of a jerk.
And what do we do when we make mistakes, darling?
Don't be lecturing me on what I should be doing. You're not my older cousin or anything. In fact, I'm older than both you and Flara.
And yet you are the one who's been avoiding Mr. Nori because of hurt feelings. Age does not matter, dear. Just go and apologize. It'll make you feel better. Besides, neither Flara or I want anything to do with the man, so that leaves you to convey our information lest we make the situation for Flara worse. Where is that man, anyway? I do not hear music like yesterday when we started the voyage.
He's in the back of the cargo hold where the captain told him to sleep. I'll go talk to him. By the way, where's Flara? Still asleep?
No, our dear friend is quite awake. Can you guess what she's doing? I will even give you a bonus guess.
Of course she is. She hasn't changed since the first day we met her. I'll check in on her to make sure the scroll didn't swallow her alive.
Apisa moved toward the stairwell leading below deck, while Rayko remained at the railing, her eyes locked on the distant horizon. A small smile crept on Apisa's face. She gave her sophisticated friend one last glance before she dipped out of sight. Ever since they first met, she and Rayko had become as thick as berry jam. To think their friendship started by standing up to a gang of judgmental girls. The stairs led to a narrow passageway with multiple doorways leading off of it. One of the doorways led into the crew quarters, where the deckhands had set up hammocks between a forest of standing posts. A few sleeping bodies rested within some of the hammocks. Another doorway led to a short hallway with smaller rooms extending off of it. These rooms were the passenger quarters. Apisa, Rayko, and Flara shared a room, and were provided hammocks to sleep in as well. Apisa poked her head into the room, and she smiled even wider. Flara sat against the wall, and a sunbeam illuminated their accommodations through a small port window. An opened scroll was unrolled in front of Flara, and her eyes drifted from the top to the bottom and then back to the top of the page again. Flara smiled, although it was such a small thing compared to any of Apisa's normal grins. Rather than bother her friend, Apisa took softer steps past their room and headed to the cargo hold toward the back of the ship. The cargo hold was by far the largest of the spaces below deck, and large barrels and bags had been piled on top of one another. A wide path had been created between the stacks, no doubt for the rather large person who was sitting against the wall behind a large stack of boxes. Apisa rounded the corner and noticed Nori, who had a bedroll laid out on a small stack of rice bags formed together. It actually formed a sort of bed, and when combined with the bedroll, it no doubt suited the very large and rugged man. Nori noticed her right away. Before she stumbled upon him, Nori had been reading a scroll of some kind, but he rolled it up as soon as Apisa rounded the corner.
So what's that? Maybe a love letter or something?
Hardly. It's just a sort of treatise my mother made me when I was a little kid. Is something the matter?
Apisa moved over to an open spot and she sat across from Nori.
Oh no, everything's fine. It's a beautiful morning, and I thought I'd come check up on you.
You came to check on me? Why?
So, listen. I'm sorry for being mean to you ever since
I whooped your butt?
Yes, you beat me. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know you don't have a lot of people who are nice to you, and I shouldn't have let my pride get the best of me. Can you forgive me?
Don't worry about it. I'm used to people holding grudges. But I do appreciate your words. So, we're headed to the city of Buka, right? I've never been there. I've only heard about it in passing.
Yep, we're headed to Buka, one of the most beautiful places. There are wide open spaces, rolling pastures, and some of the best people you'll ever meet. We're going to the Harvest Festival.
A harvest festival, huh? We have one of those in Onista, too. Suppose in Buka there's a massive town celebration over another good year of crops and such.
Yeah, pretty much. There are also games, good food, and lots of booze to be had. Well, Bukans work so hard throughout the whole entire year, so this is finally the time for us to stretch and relax. Onista is in the mountains, right? I didn't think you had farms up there.
There are little valleys between the mountains, so there are some farms that grow rice, vegetables, stuff like that. There are also a considerable amount of farms where they raise pigs, cows, and chickens. However, from what I've read, in Onista we don't really get trade from the other cities, so the farms sustain our people. Buka supplies a lot of the region, right?
Yep. Most of our rice, grains, and produce support Buka, Nagasi, and Jedi. But we also send our tribute crops to Xianba as well.
Onista doesn't send any tribute crops to the capital, but we do safeguard the rest of you lowlanders from the Oni and other horrid kinds of yokai.
Lowlanders? Wow. Looks like someone is all high and mighty about their mountain heritage. Get it? High? Because you're in the mountains?
Yeah, I got it.
I love jokes and puns. They're like unexpected sweets you find in your everyday normal interactions. You're just going about your business and then they just pop up.
So, can you recommend a good inn in Buka?
An inn?
Well, since you and Flara are such good friends, I thought...
Best friends. Rayko and I are her best friends.
Fine. Since you and Flara are best friends, I figured that so long as I was close, I would still be fulfilling my duty in ensuring her safety. Also, since harvest festivals are supposed to be fun, I figured I could help make this arrangement between her and I as comfortable for her as possible. So rather than force you to create a cover for me to stay near or with you, I'd like to set myself up in an inn.
Apisa's smile fell away and she gaped hard at Nori. Her heart squirmed a little, and she really looked at him. Despite his gruff exterior, Nori was actually really nice. He wasn't purposely trying to make this hard on Flara, and in truth, he probably didn't ask for this assignment either. Would anyone else but a weird, music-playing Onistan be as sympathetic to Flara? Flara had mentioned some stuff about how boring and strict the Chutar were in the capital. Based on her stories, they didn't sound like they joked, had fun, or even allow for leniency regarding an imperial decree. Nori arched an eyebrow at her.
What? Why are you looking at me like that?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about the inns in town. We don't really have a ton of outsider traffic coming to Buka, other than checking on grain shipments and such. There are 2 inns that I can think of that are worth their wood floors. One is called the Jinxed Cat, although I've heard the rooms are kind of small, and since you're so big...
Right. So what's the other option?
It's an inn called the Goddess's Den. I should warn you, though. It's run by a brother and sister, and they are, known for seducing their patrons at the same time. I've heard their rooms are bigger, though.
Oh, so it's either cramped rooms or overly amorous hosts. I still have a day or so to think about which is the better option. They might not flirt with me, though. I'm an Onistan.
Are you breathing?
Yes?
Then they'll flirt with you.
With a sudden motion, Apisa hopped to her feet.
I'm going to go see how the others are doing. I'm glad we had a chance to talk.
Well, me too. I'll see you later.
Apisa maneuvered through the stacked cargo and back to their little room. Rayko had joined Flara and they were in the middle of a conversation. They stopped when Apisa came in.
Hey, where were you? I was about to come look for you.
I was just talking to Nori.
And why are you smiling like that, darling? I'm guessing that your apology conversation went well, but I certainly hope it didn't go that well.
What? No, it's nothing like that. I just had a good conversation.
You apologized to Mr. Nori? Why?
Oh, I was kind of avoiding him because I lost our little competition. It's all right now.
So what were you and the musician talking about that caused you to smile so widely?
He asked me about an inn to stay in.
An inn? Why would that make you so happy, though?
Yes, do tell, dear. Why are you so happy about it? Is it because he's not trying to impose himself on your family home? Because if that is why you are so delighted, then I will share in your rejoicing. I would rather not have to share a roof with the man.
I wouldn't either, but he may have to protect me. If he tells my mother that I'm not cooperating, then I may have to leave Jedi forever.
Actually, that is why I'm happy. Mr. Nori was asking about an inn so he could give us space and allow you to have fun at the Harvest Festival while still being close enough to protect you.
Both Rayko's and Flara's eyes opened a little wider.
I know, right? I reacted the same way.
The musician actually said it. That you wanted to give Flara space and allow her some independence.
Yep, sure did. And you know me, I am an excellent judge of character. And I can tell when people are lying to me. It's like a special Pite sense or something. Anyway, Mr. Nori was being sincere. He really wants to make the best of the situation.
Wow! That would be a wonderful turn of events. Chutar are usually really disciplined, and they don't yield on their Imperial orders.
Well, maybe Mr. Nori is different than the others of his kind. If he is genuine after all, then perhaps having a constant thorn in our sides won't be as unpleasant as we'd feared.
One by one, the girls smiled to one another, and no one broke the silence for many moments. The morning sun glistened off of the surface of the terraced rice paddies, where the exposed water was visible. Many of the rice paddies had already been harvested, but there were still many patches of crop poking up from the water's surface. Sun-baked farmers waded through pools of water, grasping the rice stalks and then cutting them free with hand scythes. Nori smiled to himself as he watched them from the railing of the ship. They would be in Buka soon, or so Apisa had mentioned. A strong sense of freshness filled Nori's nostrils as he breathed in deeply. Amidst the reflective surfaces of the rice paddies, the surrounding hills were green and lush. Right about now, the farmers in the mountains near Onista would be doing much the same. As a boy, Nori often enjoyed strolling along the outer farms that surrounded the city proper. His mother was the captain of the guard for Onista as a whole, and young Nori often volunteered to deliver messages and orders to the outlying watchtowers. Whenever Nori passed by farmers, they always greeted him with broad smiles. His heart twisted a little as one of the farmers working in the fields stopped and regarded him as the passenger ship sailed along the river. The man, dressed in ragged and sweat-drenched clothing and an old straw hat, smiled and waved at Nori. Nori, of course, waved back. Could the man see that Nori wasn't like a normal lowlander? Maybe not, otherwise he might not have been waved at. Still, it was nice to pretend that his origins didn't matter, and that for once, he was allowed to enjoy the common pleasantries. Nori's eyes began to water a little as he stared into the past. He had been separated from his sweet home for so long, and so the receiving of common pleasantries was only a thing of memory. One particular event throbbed in Nori's mind's eye, a fateful day where he threw himself at a cave bear to save a little girl. Why did the Chutar have to be in town on that day? Why couldn't they have just overlooked Nori and just enjoyed the Onistans' harvest festival? What if Nori wouldn't have been forcibly conscripted into the Chutar cadet program? What would his life have been like? Nori smiled, if only to attempt to ward off the continuous bout of sadness that plagued him ever since he was torn away from his home by Imperial decree. He closed his eyes and imagined a different life, far from the crushing weight of obligation. Nori would have been a fine Onistan just like the rest of his family. He would have volunteered to work in the city militia under his mother, fighting alongside his best friends. As he grew older, he would have fallen in love with a farmer's daughter. That much was certain. Back then, there was one farmer's daughter that he was sweet on above all others, and she was equally sweet on him. They would have been married after a couple of years of courtship, as per normal custom. They would have had 2 children, a girl, then a boy. When Nori wasn't guarding the city or stationed at a watchtower, he would be helping his wife's family's farm. Seasons and years would melt together, but that was alright. They still had one another. As Nori grew into old age, he would gather with his best friends, and they would raise glasses in honor of dear, sweet Onista. Nori sighed, and a single tear trickled down his cheek. He opened his eyes and watched one of the lowlander farmers again. Such a life, as exquisite as it was never meant for him. The ship pulled into Buka's docks, and as soon as the gangplank was lowered, the passengers, including Flara and her friends, left the ship. Nori was the last, but he approached the captain of the vessel. The captain gave him a stern gaze, but it softened when Nori gave him several golden coins. When asked about the reason behind it, as Nori had already paid his fare, Nori simply said it was for a safe voyage. To Nori's surprise, the captain thanked him and wished him a genuinely warm farewell. When Nori finally left the vessel, Flara, Apisa, and Rayko were surrounded by a small group of individuals. There was an older woman with short silvery hair, a tall man with short red hair, and a younger girl with a longer red ponytail and a pink hair bow at the back of her hair. Nori stopped and pretended to be looking around for an inn.
Well, I'll be a bow-legged chipmunk in a barn full of chestnuts. Look at how big you are.
Oh, come on, Granny. I'm not that much bigger than I was. But Apoma, grown at least half a foot.
Yeah, sis. Granny and Boyan let me help with the harvesting this year. I'm going to be as strong as you when you left us in no time.
I'm sure you are. And how about you, Boyan? Have you any thoughts about finally settling down and giving Granny the next generation of Pite farmers?
Nope.
I swear he's never going to find him a wife with the way he goes on. He still doesn't talk to anyone, especially the young ladies who find reasons to come around. Honestly, boy, you're going to need to start talking more if you ever hope to find you a special somebody. There's a baker in town, a really sweet young lady with big poofy hair, and she keeps coming round to give Boyan baked goods.
Aw, you're just really shy, aren't you, big brother?
Yep.
Anyway, everybody, I want you to meet my two best friends, Ranadashi Rayko and Twisha Flara.
Well, it sure is nice to meet you, but... Oh, well, doesn't that just frost the balls off a cross-eyed heifer? It's an Anistan. I haven't seen one of them for 40 years.
Oh, great. Nori had been standing there too long. Cold spasms blasted throughout his core, and an icy sweat covered his body in various places.
Hey, you! Are you lost or something, Sonny?
Acid sloshed in Nori's stomach as he looked over. Apisa's whole gang gazed at him. Damn it! Why did he have to eavesdrop? Flara had averted her eyes, and an uncomfortable frown had been placed upon her face. Rayko's stare was chilly, and she also frowned. Apisa's expression was neutral, but she wasn't really smiling like she was before. The young man, whom Nori presumed was Buyan, peered at him with a curious stare, as if sizing him up. Buyan's biceps were quite large, and he was quite tall for a lowlander. Nori was still taller by a few inches, and his frame was still more girthy and toned through years of martial training. Still, farmland physical labor had served Buyan well. The youngest girl, Apoma most likely, gazed at Nori with piqued interest. Her little mouth hung ajar. If Nori had to guess, she was probably around 12 or 13, but no more than 15. The older woman, whom Nori assumed was Granny, had a wide smile that radiated with the same sort of welcoming charm Nori often gained from his own people.
Oh, yes, I'm trying to locate an inn. I was told about two while on board the ship. The Jinxed Cat and the goddess, something.
The goddess's den. They have the biggest rooms for rent. Although I should warn you, Sonny. If you have a heartbeat, the siblings there are likely going to try and warm your bed. Be careful if you choose that one. It's that building there.
The granny pointed to the building in the distance.
Thank you kindly, ma'am.
Nori turned to leave, but then the youngest girl called out to him.
Is that an instrument case? Do you play music?
Yes, I am a musician, and this is a lute. I heard there was a harvest festival, and I hoped I could entertain you fine folk later on during the festivities.
Well, I'll be an overstuffed hog in a deep mud pit. I love Anistan music.
Granny, how do you know about Anistan music?
What? Do you think I was always a wrinkly old hag? I used to be young and courageous like you, youngin'. When I was your age, I traveled all over Corinne, and I even went to Anista once.
Really? Can you tell us some stories?
Well, thank you for the directions, ma'am. I should go and see if they have a room in my size. Farewell.
Even as Nori moved away, he felt the cold stare from two very protective young women. The docks of Buka were surrounded by smaller one-story buildings with thatched roofs. In fact, all of the buildings in Buka appeared to be one story, with the exceptions of the barns in the distance. The people of Buka moved about, and many of the citizens carried bundles of rice or bushels of vegetables or fruits from one place to another. Whenever the Bukans noticed Nori, they often stopped and regarded him with complete awe. However, unlike people in Jedi or Xianba, most of the people of Buka didn't glare at him. More often than not, they beheld him as if he were some kind of godlike stallion that begged to be tamed. At first, it was such a strange feeling to be on the receiving end of such gazes, but the weirdness soon evaporated. A light and flowing sensation blossomed in him, and for the first time in a long time, Nori almost felt normal. The building that the granny had pointed out was a long L-shaped building, and it was also one story with a thatched roof. A sign hung above the door with a painted image of a woman sitting on several plush pillows. Nori's heart lurched into his throat as he opened the door and stepped inside. The interior of the goddess's den was illuminated by natural light, as it had many opened windows. Wooden floors spanned the interior, and a large plain brown rug laid on the floor. There was a counter at the far end of the lobby, and a man stood behind it. The man was a strong, strapping guy, at least by lowlander standards. He had short, brown, curly hair, a pair of soft blue eyes, and a set of thick, wide lips. The man wore a simple shirt and slacks. As Nori approached, the man looked up at him. At first, the man was surprised, but then his eyes illuminated with an immense fire. His lips formed a wide smile.
Well, I do declare, it appears we have a rather unique guest. Greetings, my rather large fellow. My name is Doku, and I'm one of the co-owners of this fine establishment.
A young woman walked in from the back room. She was about the same height as Doku, if not an inch shorter. Her brown hair was braided into a ponytail, but there were blue ribbons intertwined within the hair. She had the same sort of blue eyes as her brother, and yet they sparkled with a different degree of mystery. She wore a light blue dress that matched her eyes. She also had a set of wide lips, although hers were painted with a light pink hue.
Did you say something, brother? Oh my word! You are a rather large fellow, aren't you? Well, you're in luck, traveler. We have the largest rooms in town, as well as the largest beds as well.
Nori walked up to the pair of siblings, and he could feel the blush on his face intensify.
You seem quite flushed, sir. Are you all right?
Oh yes, I just came into town from a ship, and I was hoping that I could get a room for the Harvest Festival.
Oh, I see you have an instrument case with you. Would it be out of the ordinary to assume you're a musician then?
Yes, I am a musician, ma'am.
Oh, I love musicians! I certainly hope you grace us with a song later.
Sure. I would actually like to play music at the Harvest Festival.
I also couldn't help notice you are carrying a rather large weapon with you as well. It's not often we see musicians so well armed.
Oh, well, the rivers are dangerous nowadays. I have this weapon as both protection and a deterrent for would-be thieves.
Isn't that the truth? It's a shame that we have to resort to such barbaric necessities, isn't it? So, let's see about getting you a room, Mr.
Nori. Daisko Nori.
Well, it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Mr. Daisko. You'd find our rooms to be very accommodating and reasonably priced. It's 3 gold coins a night.
Nori nodded and gave the siblings 15 golden coins.
I'm not sure how long I'll be staying, but I'd like to pay for at least 5 days.
Well, we deeply appreciate your patronage, good sir. My sister will lead you to your room. I assure you that your belongings will be kept safe from any larcenous individuals. I am happy to say that Buka doesn't really have that sort of problem.
What Buka does have a problem with is gossip. Can we ask you an honest question, Master Daisko?
Sure. And you can call me Nori.
For a brief moment, both of the siblings locked gazes with one another. It was a flat sort of look.
While you were on this ship, did you by chance hear any unsavory rumors about my dear sister or I?
Well...
Oh, I knew it. That is why you were flustered when you entered, wasn't it? Please allow us to set the record straight, Nori. My brother and I are very accommodating to our patrons, but not usually that accommodating.
Yes, and the seed from which those vicious rumors spawned happened only once. Although I suspect the people who told you about our little establishment led you to believe that my dear sister and I were quite the ravenous hosts.
Well, yes, that was insinuated.
And yet you decide to venture to our establishment nonetheless. Were you hoping for such pleasantries?
Oh, no. I heard you had the biggest rooms, and the only other good inn had tiny rooms.
Well, at least they're saying we're a good inn. As my sister mentioned, we don't usually offer those sort of accommodations. However, if you did fancy one of us, then we might be persuaded to allow you to give us a private display of your music.
Yes, I would be most interested in hearing your music, with or without the added benefit of a soft kiss. Do you by chance fancy one of us, Nori?
Or both of us?
I'm really flattered, but I'm not really looking to become intimate with anyone. I would be willing to play you some music later, as friends, if you are interested.
Well, that would be lovely. We both appreciate the honesty, and also appreciate you telling us about that horrid rumor that is still going around town.
We also promise not to make you feel uncomfortable with any future playfulness. Dabu, would you please show this man to his room?
With pleasure.
Nori followed Dabu to one of the back rooms. To his surprise, the beds were actually large enough to cater to his form. There had to have been at least a dozen or so people clustered around where Nori played his lute. His large fingers danced across the strings, and sweet notes filled the Buka air. Within the crowd, Nori saw both Dabu and Doku, as well as the young red-haired girl with the pink bow. There were other younger people gathered in the crowd as well, but most of the patrons were older adults. Nori smiled softly as he finished one song and then went into another. The midday sun had started to dip down across the sky, and the mid-afternoon heat settled among the town. It was much hotter this far south, and Nori's shirt clung to his back, damp with sweat. It was much different than the cooler winds of his homeland, and even Jedi wasn't as humid as Buka was. Buka was quite nice. It certainly wasn't Onista, but it was not... A child screamed out, and it wasn't the kind of yells they often belted out during playtime. No, this child's voice resonated with terror. Nori stopped playing and the crowd turned to behold the source of the abrupt noise.
Help! Somebody help! Gobalyo and Njika need help!
The crowd made way for a small boy, perhaps no older than 10 or so. He was a skinny little kid, with long arms and big hands that he might one day grow into. One of the adults bent down to the child and took him by the shoulders.
Whoa there, little guy. What's going on?
You have to help. It's really bad. You have to come or Gobalyo and Njika are gonna die.
What do you mean, die? Explain yourself. Were you kids playing in the woods again?
We were playing near the creek when 2 forest trolls started chasing us. I got away, but the trolls trapped the others in a cave. Please, we have to do something. They're gonna die.
A great hush fell over the crowd, and many of the adults averted their eyes away from the child. They frowned, and many had tears in their eyes as well.
Please, it was my fault. I was the one who found the sleeping trolls. I was the one who woke them up.
What do you mean? What did you do?
We thought they were dead, so we were throwing rocks at them.
You damned fool! You killed your friends, you know that? What are we supposed to do against 2 forest trolls?
Some of the adults started crying softly, while others ran off to fetch, well, someone. Nori gazed around, and there weren't any sort of recognizable city guard, just farmers. Nori set his loot in its case, closed it, and then gripped his tetsubo.
I'll go. Tell me how to get to where your friends are, and I'll save them.
Suddenly, the eyes of the Buka crowd turned toward him again. Nori stood with his war club leaning on his shoulder, and a gruff, determined expression on his face. Their eyes opened wider, and perhaps the rosy illusion of the musician shattered, leaving only the brutal visage of the Onistan.
Surely you aren't going alone. We have to, or...
There's no time. If I don't go now, then your little friends will die.
With great strides, Nori closed the distance between himself and the child. It happened so fast that the crowd and the child reared back in fright.
There's no time, boy! Where are your friends?
Are they in Thatcher's cave?
The little boy turned his attention to the pink bow-wearing girl, and then nodded.
Come on, big guy. I'll show you the way.
Absolutely not. I'm not
None of the adults know where it is, but us kids know. I promise I won't get in your way, but if we don't go now, you're gonna be right. Those kids are gonna die.
A sinking tension festered in Nori's stomach, and yet the little girl spoke truthfully.
All right, but first sign of trouble, you need to run away. You got that? Also, this next part is very important. You're going to promise to tell Apisa that this wasn't my idea.
I promise. I even pinky promise.
As sincere as her words were, Nori still felt the gut-stabbing anguish and foreboding anticipation of being yelled at by the entire Pite family. The little girl started running in a direction, and so Nori chased after her. Surely the good people of Buka, or at the very least, Dabu and Doku would watch over his loot. He didn't have the time or the luxury to think about its safety at the moment. He followed her into the woods and along worn dirt paths. They bobbed past branches, leapt over logs, and ran right along a small creek in a clearing. Eventually, they came to a large rock face formation that extended 80 feet high or so. Apoma stopped, and then she started to catch her breath.
Okay, Thatcher's cave is against this cliff face. Maybe about 1/4 of a mile.
Nori stopped beside her, and then also took a much-needed breather.
If that's the case, then this is where we part ways. It's about to get too dangerous.
But I will...
No buts. This is going to get fierce, and I can't go all out if I have to worry about you in the bushes. If you want your friends saved, then go back.
You're more than just a musician, aren't you? You're in great shape and you have...
Go, I'm serious. There's no time to discuss this. Go get help.
Apoma frowned and then nodded. She moved back in the direction of town, and Nori started running along the cliff face. In his heart of hearts, he knew that little girl wasn't going to listen. Still, he couldn't focus on that right now. He breathed in deeply, and he suppressed any anxiousness he felt inside. Nori gripped his Tetsubo handle, and then he ran harder. Within a few minutes, he came upon the spot. A pair of forest trolls stood before a slight sliver of a cave entrance. The forest trolls had dark green-colored skin, which matched the foliage and the leaves of the trees. They stood 10 feet tall and had large, bulky bodies. Their jagged claws kept reaching into the cave. Neither of the trolls had hair, and their giant, bulging black eyes stared into the cave entrance. The forest trolls gurgled and growled angrily, and amidst their noise, Nori heard the whimpers of the trapped children. Nori stepped out into the open.
Why don't you try feasting on me?
The pair of trolls turned around and glared at Nori. Their lips peeled back and revealed jagged teeth. Drool dripped down their chins. One of the trolls stepped forward and let loose a massive howl that echoed in the air. Nori swung his Tetsubo in front of him in wide arcs before leveling it out in front of him. Nori's blood brimmed with heat, and yet he couldn't help but smile. White-hot energy flared to life within him. The trolls stood to their full heights, and they stomped up to Nori. The ground thudded under him, and yet Nori's adrenaline pumped harder. He charged the forest troll on the left, all while keeping an eye on the one on the right. The left forest troll slashed its claws at Nori, but the Onistan ducked under its limbs and deflected the jagged fingers with his war club. Whenever Nori maneuvered, he made sure to distance himself from the other troll, who had approached him with a hunger. Nori's war club batted away the troll's attacks, and he waited for the right opening. The longer that Nori maintained an effective defense, the more frantic the troll's attacks became. An opening finally occurred, and Nori ducked under a savage claw swipe. He struck the troll against its inner right calf with all of his might. The metal studs broke open the monster's skin, and greasy green-colored blood began pouring out onto the ground. The leg crumpled in on itself, and the troll fell to the ground. Nori caught movement from the corner of his eye, and he leapt forward as quickly as he could. A swift pain ignited across his shoulders, and he heard the telltale sounds of fabric ripping. Nori twirled about to face the second angry troll. The second troll moved in to bite him, but Nori grabbed both ends of his Tetsubo. He jammed it into the creature's opened mouth, which prevented the monster from clenching its jaws closed. Nori twisted the Tetsubo at a sharp angle and sent the troll toppling to the ground. The Onistan gripped the war club by the handle once more, and then backstepped away from the first troll as it swiped an angry claw at him. The air whipped against his face and made his eyes flutter. Nori smiled as he increased the distance between the trolls. The injured troll managed to get to a knee, but it winced in pain as it tried to apply any pressure onto its now ruined leg. The other troll charged Nori with flailing claws. Just as before, Nori dodged its attacks, blocked and deflected, and countered when he could. He struck the monster in the face with significant force, and yet it only seemed to anger the forest troll. The injured troll let out another angry screech, and then it threw itself at Nori with reckless abandon. Nori stopped and rolled to avoid being buried by its massive form. However, the uninjured troll left another 3 scrapes across Nori's chest. His shirt was a tattered mess covered in Nori's blood. Constant pain throbbed with intensity, but Nori pushed it away. Onistans endured, and so too would Nori. He tore off his ruined shirt, and then watched as the pair of trolls positioned themselves around Nori. The uninjured troll was to his right, while the wounded one crawled toward him from the left. At the same moment, they both leapt at Nori. Nori rolled behind him and landed a foot away or so. The trolls collided with one another and then eased around so they could face him. Nori crushed the face of the lame troll, deflating its nose. It roared and punched out in a series of feeble attempts. The injured troll attacked in such a frenzy that it accidentally struck its companion multiple times. In response, the second troll started slapping back and pushing away at the first one. In all the confusion, Nori moved back around to the second troll. He raised his Tetsubo high and then brought it down upon the base of its back. Something cracked loudly, and the monster reared its head back and screeched. Nori swung again and hit the troll in the side of the head. Its body thudded against the ground a moment later. The first troll, the one whom Nori had destroyed its leg, swiped at Nori again. He managed to get his war club up in time and knocked the troll's hand away in the opposite direction. A massive opening greeted Nori, and so he took it. He slammed his Tetsubo against the monster's face, and it fell onto its back.
Mr. Nori! Behind you!
Nori ducked as fast as he could, and the tips of the second troll's claw nearly tore open the back of his skull. His mouth went dry, and he pivoted around with all of his speed. The troll towered over him with twitching eyes, and its arms held high. He threw himself to the side as the troll double fist pounded the ground. Nori slammed his Tetsubo against one of the troll's arms, and the arm lost all form. As the troll turned to face Nori, the Onistan struck it again on the side of the head. This time when it fell, Nori crushed its face with a swift third and fourth strike. He whirled around to behold the first troll slowly get to an upright sitting position. It only remained so a moment before it fell back to the ground. Nori went over and smashed its skull like the other one. Nori stood over the bloody bodies and he looked toward the cave. Two little faces poked out, and their eyes lit up when they noticed something beyond Nori. When Nori followed their line of sight, he nearly jumped. Dozens of people stood amidst the bushes, including Apisa, Rayko, and Flara. Many of the adults had pitchforks, spears, or clubs with them. The pair of children ran out of the cave toward their desperately happy parents. Nori slumped down where he stood, as the pain finally started to reveal its true strength to him. He winced as he gazed down at his injuries. To his surprise, Rayko moved up to him first. She held a box in her hands.
You certainly are a mess, Mr. Musician. Hold still while I see to your injuries.
Apisa and Flara moved up beside Rayko.
No, don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I just need to...
You need to do as you're told and stay still while I see to your injuries. We cannot have you getting your wounds infected and dying. That would be problematic for all of us.
Please do as she says, Mr. Nori. We don't want anything bad to happen to you.
Yeah, especially after what you just did. I have to admit, I'm surprised. I didn't expect an Onistan to be that tough. Way to go.
Rayko took the time to clean Nori's wounds, and she applied some kind of salve to them. The medicine stung a little, but Nori didn't reveal it to the women. Rayko moved over to the pair of children to check them out as well. Apisa started to work with the other Bukans to drag the troll bodies back to town. Nori simply sat and watched them, and Flara sat beside him.
Mr. Nori? Are you feeling better? Are you still in pain?
Thank you for your concern, Miss Flara. I'm gonna be okay. The medicine that your friend placed on me is numbing the pain a little. I've been conditioned to endure these kinds of encounters anyway.
That was really brave of you to go and save the children. I understand that other men were, really afraid to confront the trolls. But not you. I wanted to thank you for your courage.
You're welcome, Miss Flara. I'm glad that the children are safe and sound.
Me too.
And for a long moment, neither Nori or Flara said anything. Flara simply stared down at the ground, while Nori stared ahead. As soon as Rayko stood up from examining the children, Flara simply rose and went off to her. Nori grabbed his Tetsubo and walked behind the Bukans as they dragged the pair of troll carcasses. Nori smiled to himself. Despite these three young women not wanting him there, they each bestowed an unexpected kindness upon him. A warm fluttering danced in his heart as they made their way back to Buka. The rest of the Harvest Festival went on without any major concerns, troll or otherwise. The families of the cornered children came up to Nori during the festival and bestowed gifts of hugs and thank yous. Nori had been allowed to play his lute at the festival as a guest of honor, due to his courage and valor, and the entire Buka community watched him when he performed. When it was finally time for him to return to Jedi, the entire community came to see him off. For the first time in a long time, Nori didn't quite feel so much like an outsider. As the ship sailed away from Buka, an ocean of faces gazed back at Nori warmly. He beamed a warm grin back at them.